What was it I did? What was it I did? Who am I? It was fantastic. I enjoyed every moment of it. Goldie Hawn has been America's sunshine for over half a century. She is referred to as the golden girl of Hollywood because she never fails to light up the screen, laugh, and shine. But despite being an extremely bright star, Goldie has hues that have names. Despite her kindness, she has a list of celebrities who have insulted her, hurt her, or made her feel awful in private. Because she was gentle, men believed she was weak. Men who discovered the truth the hard way. When the camera stopped rolling, several of them co-stars became nasty. Others made an effort to be kind to her, but were irate when she didn't comply with their requests. Some people didn't believe she was more than just a gorgeous face until she left. For a long time, Goldie kept the stories to herself, but now that she is 79, the mask is falling off and the truth is out. Since the strain has always existed, she won't mention their names, because she doesn't have to. In one instance, it nearly destroyed the entire film. Her first choice was Chevy Chase. He is a well-known comedian who transformed their humorous film into a battleground. People adored Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase's relationship when Foul Play was released in 1978. However, they were blind to the mayhem behind the scenes. According to sources, Chevy did not behave in a pleasant manner outside of work. He was erratic and grumpy, and he constantly undermined director Colin Higgins by making scenes a mess for fun, changing lines at the last minute and rejecting takes he didn't like. Even while he was already well known from Saturday Night Live, when the camera stopped rolling, his ego only got stronger. He would get upset when Goldie made a joke, rage at teammates who interfered with his flow, and insist on having the final say on practically all creative decisions. What appeared simple on television was a slow-motion train catastrophe behind the scenes. Goldie attempted to keep things light as any good boss would. She made jokes, lifted everyone's spirits, and soothed him when he was feeling angry. But fissures started to appear. One team member overheard her tell a stylist, "He's not funny. Sometimes he's not being cruel." Nor was she inventing this. According to crew sources, Chevy would ridicule Goldie's lines and complain about how much he was carrying the film. In order to have something amusing to say, he would even decline to film a scene until it was altered. He was destroying the story to make himself feel better, not to make it better. The tension was at an all-time high by the last weeks of filming. They rarely spoke to one another until absolutely necessary. Chevy was well known for his sardonic sarcasm and arrogant haughtiness. Even though Goldie had been one of Hollywood's most bankable and adored performers for nearly 10 years, he is alleged to have made disparaging remarks about her flirtatious personality and questioned her comedy abilities. He reportedly told a director, "She's lucky to be in my orbit." His dislike of her was evident in every glance, sigh, and offensive joke he smiled while telling her. Goldie remained silent in public. She never played the victim, according to those who knew how furious she was. She said to her pals that she had never been treated so poorly by a co-star. According to one assistant, she began discreetly requesting to train by herself in order to avoid being around Chevy's cruel, harsh aura. The team had to tread carefully and covertly take sides, as what began as a light comedy devolved into an emotional minefield. Everyone on the set was exhausted, and there was no longer any happiness or vitality. What ought to have been the highlight of their life became a challenge to their fortitude. Chevy didn't appear to know, or worse, was content, according to a makeup artist. Everyone just wanted to make it to the wrap party without screaming. Prior to Foul Play, he had a reputation for stealing sequences and making other actors look bad, but this production solidified that image. Those crew members who had initially taken a liking to him soon lost that feeling. A lighting specialist later remarked, "He wasn't a genius." Another grip added, "He knew when to be mean." The set was like a kingdom, and everyone was like his court. Despite the film's success at the box office, Goldie refused to discuss sequels or future collaborations. Studios put a lot of pressure on them, offering rewards like cash, recognition, and even Oscars. But she refused to even pick up the phone. "Not interested," was all she said to her agent, and she meant every word. There are currently no endearing exchanges, sentimental photos, or actual footage of her with Chevy Chase. Only a deep wound that refuses to go away. He was placed on her blacklist and would never be removed. But on that list, who was the man after Chevy? Let's just say he wasn't attempting to spoil a film. He was attempting. Warren Beatty is one of just two. In the 1970s, Warren Beatty was more than just a movie star. Charming, intelligent, and constantly engaged in gossip. He was a force. His off-screen activities were equally as well known as his on-screen work. Instead of dating women, he pursued them as if they were valuable commodities. At one point, he did glance at Goldie Hawn. At first, she was happy. How come they wouldn't be? You might get goods from famous people in Hollywood. It was a lot for Beatty. He invited her to lunch, supper, and parties, where he gave her too many compliments and held her hand for too long. Goldie was courteous but not angry, so it was cool. She didn't want to be a supporting character in the beady romance, and was aware of the constraints. She repeatedly declined him with grace. The enchantment broke at that point. Warren was not accustomed to rejection, not from someone he considered weak anyway. He enjoyed it when his women followed his instructions, and when he was unstoppable, he started launching cheap assaults behind closed doors, according to people who know him well. Goldie was deemed unstable, too humorous, and not serious enough for actual work, according to the people in charge. If someone mentioned her work in meetings, he would roll his eyes and chuckle at her name. Additionally, he would call her derogatory names during meetings. You know the story. If he couldn't have her, he would harm her, and it was successful. Doors started to silently and slowly close. She was no longer admitted to the key rooms. Meetings were canceled. Texts she had been promised vanished. Warren didn't do anything significant to undermine her accomplishments. His use of ambiguity, clues, and strategically placed words to achieve his goals was extremely Hollywood. According to one producer, they were informed that Goldie's excessive baggage made her unsuitable for a prominent role. Beatty's wounded pride was the only item provided. Goldie recognized it. "I don't mix business with power plays." That was the only thing she ever said in public when someone questioned if she would ever collaborate with him, but she was blunter when they were by themselves. She said, "He can't handle being turned down. He makes it pay." According to a former assistant, he did properly, medically, and without any physical contact. She never yelled in interviews or gave in to rumors, even if those close to her knew the reality. Hearing Beatty's name, all she could do was moan and glance aside. When the studios mentioned his name for potential co-starring roles, she would snub them with a glance. It wasn't angry, it was just certain, she would explain, as though referring to a closed door whose key she had misplaced. "That's not going to happen." According to one friend, she burnt the entire book, not just that section. Years later, Beatty attempted to utilize the outdated card at a high-profile awards ceremony. He approached her and grinned as if nothing had occurred. Goldie turned on her heel, grinned back, remained silent, and maintained her composure. But the next man on her list of evil guys didn't try to impress her. A reporter a few feet away observed it all and said, "That smile could freeze hell." He never discussed her behind her back. He made an effort to discredit her in front of the entire casting room. Dustin Hoffman is the third person. There was silence in the room. Two of Hollywood's top stars, a casting director and a few directors, are reading lines next to each other. In an unusual and deliberate departure from her typical humorous roles, Goldie Hawn was asked to try out for a high-profile drama. She was grounded, prepared, and eager to prove herself. There was already going to be Dustin Hoffman. The fact that two large men were in the same room first made it feel exciting. However, something changed while they were reading. Hoffman brought the scene to a halt. His temper swings and strong technique style were well known. The situation grew tense when he interrupted her, saying, "You're not connecting." Goldie stopped moving, and he grinned, telling the directors, "She's still acting like it's a sitcom." While some of the producers laughed uneasily, others did not. Whether it was a part of the bit was unclear. It wasn't. That was surgically accurate humiliation. His purpose was to put down, not to collaborate. The live autopsy that was supposed to be a reading was conducted on Goldie. Her eyes were clear and her voice steady as she read the rest of it, but something inside her had altered. It went beyond simple embarrassment. It was unfair. She understood the difference between undermining someone out of spite and offering tough advice. Being the best was more important than skill. She was not just angry, but she had finished using that room. She left the job without giving it much thought the following day. She reportedly told her agency, "I won't fight to be taken seriously by men who already think I'm funny." She declined multiple opportunities to reunite with him or try out another actor. It was obvious that she would never again collaborate with Dustin Hoffman. She didn't need to. More was said by not being there than by any official statement. Those who were in the casting room knew what had happened, even though it appeared that no one else in the industry did. Hoffman demonstrated himself, not a weakness. It was control disguised as craft, not criticism. It wasn't method acting, it was technique misuse. It had nothing to do with Goldie's pride. It was about respect. Those who knew her well knew exactly who she was referring to when she told a reporter, "In this business, some men forget they're not in charge of the women around them." Over a period of many years, she admitted to herself that she was afraid of the situation, not because she lost a piece, but more because she briefly began to question her own intuition. And for someone like Goldie, that was the bigger lie. Hoffman didn't only attempt to dominate a scene. He made a concerted effort to get rid of her. There was no student across from him that he could see. He glanced at someone he could amuse himself by teasing. He utilized the interview as a platform and Goldie as a prop in his speech. For the first time in years, Goldie wrote in her book that night when she came home, according to a close friend, "He tried to shrink me. He can't do that. She didn't. She never returned to that aspect of the business on anyone else's terms." It was her own way, her own pace, and her own definition of success. She demonstrated how to be strong without sacrificing enjoyment. You have to be accountable for it. "If the room's right," is what she would answer when asked later if she would follow up on another theatrical recommendation. It was the way she expressed everything while omitting some details. What about her next list item? That one took her by surprise and altered her perspective on comedy in general. Bill Murray is number 4. He arrived to the first table an hour late, but he didn't apologize or provide an explanation. Rather, he slammed his half-drunk coffee onto the script pages like cushions, strode in noisily, and made a nasty remark about someone. Early negotiations were underway for Bill Murray and Goldie Hawn to co-star in a comedy in the late 1980s. It would fit his innate charm and be a quirky studio endeavor. On paper, they looked like a perfect fit. Bill was the show's unexpected star, and Goldie was America's love. However, Goldie was immediately aware that the first meeting wasn't quite right. Murray did what he was known to do as the reading began. He made fun of the dialogue, skipped beats, and made significant situations humorous, completely deviating from the original. He scowled, rolled his eyes, and pretended that the writing was a slight to his intelligence. He altered entire passages on the spot, leaving the writers speechless and giving them the impression that their work was unimportant. At first, Goldie attempted to keep things light by grinning without cause. This was different from the improvisers she had previously worked with. "Why don't you try acting like you've done drama before?" Murray questioned her with a smile in the middle, and many of the guys in the room chuckled because they found the men's harsh behavior amusing. Goldie didn't find it funny. She set down her script at a break, got up and walked quietly away. She remained calm. She didn't request any adjustments. The woman remained silent. The following day, however, her team called the producers. She went out. Nothing for the media. No rumors were released. There ought to be just one obvious path. Rumors circulated. "It sounds like a lot of work." According to someone who knows her, she told a buddy, "He thinks being unpredictable is brilliant." According to another, she advised her representatives to avoid working on any upcoming projects with comics who mistakenly believed that being impolite equated to being impulsive. There were some poor jokes, but it was about a trend, a whole society of men who used their intelligence and charm as a weapon and referred to it as art. The female co-stars were left to deal with their mental health issues as sequences were hurried through, and all the attention was diverted from them. Peacemaking was not an option. No warm-up was performed. Goldie never mentioned him again after a long time. Didn't turn around. Several times the studio's managers requested a fix. He was still being referred to be famous, and she was still able to obtain a loan. However, she consistently expressed her lack of interest. They didn't slam the door. She removed the entire house from her map. The final straw for her was that set. Goldie, she didn't simply walk out of the movie. She began turning down several employment offers. Don't work with rough guys on any more buddy comedies. She would never again have to grin while being pushed about or taunted. The "he's just being Bill" smile, the "he's smiling," and the behind-the-scenes apology that was never too late. She was finished. She started saying no more frequently, but not in a kind or apologetic manner. She was questioned in an interview why, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, she declined so many comedies with male leads. Goldie's definition of peace was that she would never have to supervise another adult man-child on set again, so she smiled knowingly and stated, "I chose peace." The next man she was close to, however, was colder, more calculating, and more cutting than Bill Murray, who was a crazy jumble of ego and emotion. She will never forget the charity dinner where it all took place. Sean Penn is number 5, with cameras everywhere, and a large charity dinner in Malibu, packed with well-known individuals and influential business people. It was meant to be a great evening. Goldie Hawn was requested to deliver a brief speech on mental health and mindfulness, which was a topic that was very important to her. She wasn't there to sell a company or advertise a film. She spent days writing something sincere. It came from the heart, not to advance my own interests. However, Sean Penn, seated a few tables away, was already acting ostentatious by sighing loudly, rolling his eyes and shifting around in his chair as though he was bored. Afterwards, some guests reported hearing him murmur, "Another celebrity wellness sermon." Others chuckled. Many of them were unsure about what to do. Those that respected and liked Goldie remained silent out of sympathy. Like Penn, the others pretended that his sarcasm was amusing. Penn sat back in his chair and laughed so loudly that he could be heard at other tables. His words were, "She should stick to giggling." Everyone applauded. Goldie remained still. She lifted her glass and departed early, a smile on her face. Her closest friends and family, however, realized that she was exploding with genuine rage rather than phony fury. There was reserve wrapped around disdain. She felt hurt, not because her pride was wounded, but because someone had casually written down something she sincerely shared and truly believed in. He believed her hope was less significant than his pessimism. Known for his tortured uprising, he was unable to see that weakness might equally be a power. One lady claimed that she sobbed on the way home in the car, but not because she was upset, but rather because she was sick of being upset. "My whole career," she reportedly remarked. That night she established a new rule. She would not play with Sean Penn, do interviews with him, or give him pleasant air kisses across a room. "And men who don't know what the hell I stand for still make me laugh." Later, when questioned about him, she gave a prearranged smile and responded, "Not my energy." In private she was more straightforward. Penn was serious, almost aggressive. When she informed her pals, "You can be an activist without stepping on someone else's mission." His instability was a favorite of the tabloids. He was nearly a showman in his wrath. It was love, according to the directors. Goldie also noticed harshness that appeared to be dedication. Goldie's perception was different. There was not a moment or a fight. They were too far away for that to ever occur. It was an open and obvious dismissal. She neglected to patch the crack that was left behind. After that night, she started to be very particular about where she went. After decades of kindness, she now desired more consideration, more care, more attention. No more rooms full of males who enjoyed demeaning others in order to feel superior. She also didn't play the game. When they reconnected at award presentations or parties for mutual acquaintances, she always departed early, and when she looked at him, he gave her a blank look of courtesy. However, what about her list's last name? That one was unique. He wasn't a friend, a co-star, or even a competitor. She questioned whether traditional respect ever applied to women like her. Because he was a well-known actor and purported gentleman. Kirk Douglas is number 6. History was always honored by Goldie Hawn. She worked beneath the brilliant light of names that helped shape Hollywood into what it is today, and her home contained chambers that had been constructed by giants. And more than most, Kirk Douglas's name was prominent. However, behind the scenes, Goldie felt the weight of what those stories all too frequently stood for. Respect is not the same as love. She never publicly criticized him. That wasn't her personality. However, some who know her well believe that Douglas really offended her. Not for any obvious reason, but because of how effortlessly he made her feel insignificant and little. When Douglas saw her at industry functions, he would overdo his charm. Using traditional methods, he would wink at her slowly, kiss her on the hand, and make disparaging remarks about her appearance. Some viewed it as unexpected bravery. Goldie found it uncomfortably tight. Not a single slur was heard when she reportedly told a pal, "He talks to me like I'm still the blonde in a B scene. I also got an Oscar." No chaotic time. They introduced her as visionary and called her beautiful Miss Hawn. "You can be number 1 on the call sheet and still feel like the decoration," she told him once. It was more subtle than that. The frequent interruptions during panels, the dismissal of her ideas during serious discussions. No one was intended to be harmed. The topic of discussion was how some men had been indoctrinated to only appreciate a woman's beauty when she was present. It doesn't harm to get fired in that way. It seems to have done so. Goldie listened to them for years. She maintained a working relationship with his son Michael Douglas, whom she commended for his kindness and deference in the modern world. No matter how many screenplays she altered or how much creative freedom she battled for and gained, Kirk remained a relic to her, a reminder of a Hollywood that never looked past her smile. Douglas interrupted her 3 times in 5 minutes, which is why one producer recalled leaving a panel. "I've said what I need to say," she reportedly stated before quietly leaving the room. Goldie still doesn't discuss him frequently. She said that she did it not out of fear or courtesy, but because some men don't deserve a second act in your memory. However, Goldie Hawn's memory was the one thing that Hollywood misjudged about her. There was more to her fame than the laughter, the carefree spontaneity, and the golden aura, iron. Years of being questioned, scolded, and ridiculed, always with a grin, had sharpened her will. She recalled every eye roll that was actually feedback, every joke that wasn't really a joke, and every instance in which she was disregarded before she even said anything.